Election season heats up in New York City. Two men are in the hunt for new jobs. The Point starts right now. Michael Blake worked for former President Barack Obama and represented the Bronx in the New York State Assembly. Now he wants to be mayor. So here's the question. You are in a very, 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 very crowded field.
A lot of verities right there.
But it's true. And so why are you the best person to get the job and to replace Eric Adams?
Because I'm the only person who has federal, state, and local experience. When you think about who has to be a mayor is a manager. We're talking about a $100 billion enterprise of a city where we can transform what's possible. And we have to be very clear when we're thinking about affordable housing, the true cost of living, public services. There's only one person in this race who can actually say that they have worked in the White House and know how to effectively lead, has been successful in the state, has been successful locally. And my name is Michael Blake, and that's why I'm the best candidate for mayor.
So that leads us right into what's going on now in the city, where the current mayor of the city of New York has been spending a lot of time going to Washington to cultivate a relationship with President Trump. How do you look at that? I mean, do you think that that's a smart thing to do?
It's unacceptable.
Why?
Because you think about on MLK Day, when many of us, myself included, were leading services in New York City, Eric Adams canceled on New Yorkers that morning to sit in an overflow room for Trump because he's clearly trying to seek a pardon and get out of a crime. And so at the end of the day, it's not about conversations around policy. Again, I worked in the White House. I led efforts around policy on Affordable Care Act and helping people keep their homes. Eric Adams is making it very clear. He is hoping that if he kisses the ring of Donald Trump, it will help us here. But what New Yorkers want, how are you going to make sure our streets are actually safe? How are you actually going to have public safety? How are we going to have affordable housing? What are we doing for our people? That's why it's very different and why we have to have a change.
But see, he's now arguing that this relationship that he has paid off for the city. Just the other day, when the federal government decided to sue cities who have not complied with their sanctuary city policies, and they filed the suit not against New York, which is the Big Apple and the biggest sanctuary city in the country, but against Chicago and the state of Illinois. And he says it's because of his relationship with the White House.
Well, you
buy that?
I don't at all, and neither are New Yorkers, which is why he's in single digits right now. Let's think about what Eric Adams has done. His vision has been one where Donald Trump had Medicaid freezes happening for 48 hours, which led to complete destruction and fear. A vision where they want to eliminate the Department of Education. None of those efforts are helpful to New Yorkers. And when we think about what's happening right now, consistently, Eric Adams is making it very clear that the policy priorities of New Yorkers are actually not the priority of him. And so I'm running because we have three things we have to focus upon: the true cost of living, affordable housing, and public services. None of those three are being addressed by Eric Adams every time he's going to D.C. That is why I'm doing this now.
But here's the big question. How do you make this city more affordable for most people who live here?
Very specifically, and it's an excellent question. First, around the true cost of living, a guaranteed income so that you can raise wages and actually reduce the cost of New Yorkers. You know, I was just at a supermarket where eggs were $14 and a gallon of milk was $11. But if you have a guaranteed floor for income, as well as a local median income, you then are creating policies where not only will you keep more money in your pocket, but you also reduce costs at the same time.
Who's going to pay for that?
That comes from us in the policies. Those are the policies that are established. We think about that. We've done it every single time. Think about during COVID, when they said we couldn't figure out ways to do this, we sent checks out to individuals to help with that.
But it seems like in order to do that, you're going to have to raise taxes. The money has to come from somewhere.
You generate the revenue by encouraging and bringing back businesses into the city who have not been here, who have felt that the city has not been safe for them because we're actually not keeping streets clean. We're actually not making sure that their windows not being vandalized. If we do these pieces, you'll increase commercial revenue and you will not increase taxes on the individuals. Simultaneously, around affordable housing, we need a Mitchell-Lama 2.0, which I've been the first person to indicate that, but also a universal child care. When you have child care centers being closed across the city, in particular in Brooklyn, because they were not being paid on time by the city, If you address the cost of housing and childcare, you'll reduce the cost for New Yorkers while also putting more money in their pocket.
I still get back to who pays for all of this.
That comes from our policies that get changed. So we
Sounds
implement
to me
it from
like
the
it's
city.
going to be more taxes.
Not necessarily. It's not on the individual, on the corporations potentially. But when we think about this, an increase in sales tax and sales tax revenue by people coming back into the city leads to services that we're paying for. And when we think about this, New Yorkers, we, as someone who's born and raised here, Creston and Burnside in the Bronx throughout my entire life, now on the South Bronx, when we have better services, we feel that we'll fight for that. So at the end of the day, we pay too much, but we get back too little.
So I guess the question then becomes, like, how are you going to get corporations to move back if they know they're going to be paying higher taxes? The reason why a lot of corporations leave New York City and go to New Jersey or Delaware or South Dakota is because their taxes are less, not because they don't like New York.
I think a lot of people left because they felt like the city wasn't welcoming to them, and that you had an environment where it was a bureaucratic mess, which the city was not being responsive to them, where you had nonprofits simultaneously not getting paid on time, waiting plus a year plus for payments. And then you had an issue around consistent public safety and people not feeling safe. And so when you think about the conditions, I should be able to ride a train or drive to work or walk to work and feel safe and secure. Just this past week, I was walking down the block of my house and another store was vandalized itself. That is leading to businesses saying we don't want to be here and welcoming that. And so to that degree, if you create a business environment, which I have ran and still run successful small businesses myself, when businesses feel secure and then they hire New Yorkers and make sure that New Yorkers have a better chance, everyone wins. We increase our revenue in the city and we pay for the programs and services that we deserve.
So some of the people who are running against you, some of your opponents, have come up with ideas that they think will make the city more affordable. For example, a rent freeze. How do you feel about that?
I think there should be a rent freeze on some of the rent stabilized units. I think across the board we have to assess on if that's even feasible itself. But we're talking about effectively less than half of New Yorkers that would be applicable to.
Free bus service.
I think that's a challenge to see how that effectively gets implemented across the board, because then you're still trying to figure out how you generate revenue back. Yes, we should make sure that there's more opportunities, but if you're losing revenue and not replacing revenue, we have to be thinking of if that's feasible, how.
So it's an idea that sounds good but may not be able to be implemented?
I think at the end of the day, if that is the case, as we've seen from the candidate who stated that, that would lead to an increase in taxes on individuals, which he has said. And I think New Yorkers don't want to hear that right now.
No.
If you're feeling, I'm not feeling safe, I don't feel like I can keep a home, I feel like my kids don't have a chance, I don't think someone wants to hear, well, let me raise taxes on you, which is what one of their candidates said they would do.
So you just talked about going to the supermarket and seeing eggs $14 a case.
Yeah.
So one of your opponents said the city should open its own supermarkets where they could charge people less and have less overhead. Good idea? Bad idea?
I think the premise of the idea makes sense if you're trying to find ways for people to have reduced costs on groceries. And their proposal was essentially one per borough. But that's not fixing the problem at scale. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, why are our costs going up and why are we having the situations we're due? And it's twofold. You have policies federally that would lead to rising of costs, especially when talks of tariffs and others, which Eric Adams being silent about Donald Trump on that, as well as we're actually not helping more New Yorkers to put more money in their pocket. Fundamentally, essentially half of New Yorkers and half of Americans don't have $500 in their bank account when it comes to savings. So if we're not fixing the broader problem of the expenses, then we're actually not fixing the problem that's helping New Yorkers to have a chance to win.
One of the things that I've been concerned about, especially with this talk of raising tariffs on Canada, is the fact that there's a Canadian pipeline that's supposed to be coming online next year that's going to bring electricity to 1 million homes in New York City. Mm-hmm. But the prices could go up because of what's going on. We only have about a minute left, but what do you think about that, and how can we stop the Canadians from upping the cost of their electricity, which is going to have a terrible impact on New York City?
Well, there's a consistent concern around the monopolies that happen around utilities that lead to rising costs. And so this is a clear example of why I need to be mayor, not Eric Adams, because you have someone who is silent about Donald Trump's policies in which tariffs will lead to rising costs to New Yorkers. And his silence is complicit in agreement with what Trump and Elon are doing right now. In reverse, if we actually have a guaranteed income, if we actually transform with universal child care, if we focus on an education pipeline where our kids can have civics, financial literacy, mental health, as well as make sure our public services all work, then we can actually address the problems that people are facing in New York.
Okay, that's all the time we have right now. But up next, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine is hoping to make his mark on another office.